You woke up this morning with a plan. Maybe it was simple: get up, drink water, do the thing you said you'd do yesterday and the day before that. But instead, you lay there, not because you were tired, not really. You just started thinking. And somewhere in those first few minutes, while the ceiling was still the same ceiling, and the light through the curtain was the same light it always is, you made a decision. You told yourself, I'll start properly tomorrow. Or maybe it was, there's no point, it won't work anyway. Or the one that's hardest to admit, something is just wrong with me. You didn't say it out loud. You don't have to. It was just a feeling dressed up as logic. A quiet, convincing voice that sounded exactly like your own thinking, except it wasn't really thinking at all. It was something older, something automatic, something your brain had already decided before you even fully woke up. And here's what's strange. You've noticed this before. You've watched yourself do this. You've had the weird experience of knowing you're doing it and still not being able to stop it. You're not lazy. You've proven that in other areas of life. You're not stupid. People who don't know you well sometimes assume you are because of the inconsistency. But you know there's something underneath it that you haven't quite figured out yet. Maybe you've been called difficult, oversensitive, too much in your head, a procrastinator, unfocused. Maybe some part of you has quietly started to believe those labels. This video isn't going to call you any of those things, but it also isn't going to reassure you with empty comfort. What it's going to do is show you what's actually happening inside your brain every single morning, explain the science in plain everyday language, and then give you something you can actually use. Because the truth is, your brain isn't broken. It's just running a very old program. And once you understand the program, you stop fighting it the wrong way. Before we go any further, I want to say something to you directly. If you're carrying something right now, a struggle, a pattern you can't explain, a version of yourself that confuses even you, drop it in the comments below. Tell your story. Not because this channel needs engagement, but because your specific situation could become the exact script that helps someone else, and maybe even a full video made just for you and people like you. Your comment might be the reason the next video exists. So say something real down there. Okay, let's get into this. There is a belief that almost every self-improvement space quietly shares. It goes something like this. If you just have enough discipline, enough motivation, enough willpower, you'll do what you know you need to do. And you've tried that? You know you have. You've made the lists. You've set the alarms. You've watched the videos. You've had the moments of real, genuine determination where you truly believed this time was different. And then morning came. And something happened that didn't fit the belief. You felt motivated the night before and completely empty in the morning. Or you started strong for 3 days, then one slightly rough morning cracked the whole thing. Or worse, you did everything right, and still the resistance came. That's the confusing part nobody talks about honestly. Because if it was just discipline, and discipline is a skill you can build, then why does the resistance not get smaller? Why does it sometimes feel like it gets bigger the more you push against it? The answer has nothing to do with your character. It has to do with something called the default mode network, and a biological process your brain runs every single morning whether you want it to or not. The default mode network, let's just call it your brain's background program, is a network of connected brain regions that switches on when you're not focused on anything specific. Think of it like your phone's home screen. When no app is open, the home screen is running. It's using battery. It's displaying information. It's making decisions about what to show you next. You didn't ask it to. It just does. Every morning when you first wake up, your brain hasn't fully shifted out of this background mode yet. It's still running old files. It's sorting through memories from yesterday, patterns from the past week, emotional residue from unresolved situations, and threat assessments from things that worried you recently. All of that is happening below the surface. And here's the important part. The conclusions it draws during that process feel like your thoughts. They feel like you. But they aren't really decisions you're making. They're outputs from a machine that was designed for a completely different world. A world where the morning was dangerous, where the unknown outside the shelter was a genuine physical threat, where the brain that stayed cautious, that anticipated the worst, that resisted change and held close to the familiar, that brain kept its owner alive. Your brain inherited all of that machinery. It runs every morning, even now, even when the only threat you're facing is a to-do list. And this is where something called negativity bias comes in. Negativity bias is your brain's built-in tendency to pay more attention to negative information than positive information. Think of it like a security guard who's been trained to watch only for danger signs. They're not trying to ruin your day. They're just doing the job they were trained for. They notice every crack in the wall, every stranger who looks slightly unusual, every sound that might be a problem. Meanwhile, the sunshine, the clean floors, the people laughing, none of that registers as important. Not because it isn't there, but because it's not part of their assignment. Your brain's morning scan works the same way. Before you've had coffee, before you've made a conscious decision, before your thinking brain has fully come online, your brain has already swept the environment for threats and given you its report. This day is going to be hard. You didn't sleep well enough. You still haven't fixed that thing. You're already behind. And because that report comes from inside your own head, in your own inner voice, using your own logic, you believe it. You take it as fact. You plan your morning around it. And then you wonder why motivation feels impossible. Here's something that will make this even clearer. There's a concept in psychology called cortisol awakening response. Cortisol is often called the stress hormone, but that's an oversimplification. Think of cortisol like your brain's morning startup fuel. When you wake up, your body releases a sharp spike of cortisol in the first 20 to 30 minutes. This is normal. This is supposed to happen. It's actually what helps you feel alert enough to get going. But here's what that spike also does. It activates threat detection systems in the brain. It makes you slightly more sensitive to risk and uncertainty. It turns up the volume on everything that feels unresolved. So, in the first 30 minutes of your day, you are biologically more likely to feel anxious, more likely to notice problems, more likely to feel the weight of things that haven't been dealt with. Not because those things are actually worse in the morning, but because your brain's threat radar is temporarily louder. The alarm you feel about your goals, your life, your choices, your relationships. That alarm isn't a judgment from some wise part of you seeing things clearly. It's a chemical spike doing its job. And if you make decisions about yourself, your future, or your day during that spike, those decisions are going to carry the weight of that chemical state. You'll cancel plans because they seemed manageable at 9 p.m. and overwhelming at 7 a.m. You'll write off projects because they felt exciting last week and pointless right now. You'll stay in bed an extra hour not because rest is what you need, but because the brain convinced you that getting up wouldn't change anything anyway. This is what I mean when I say your brain is lying to you every morning. It's not malicious. It's not broken. It's doing exactly what it evolved to do. It's just doing it in a world it wasn't designed for. Now let's go a layer deeper. Because some of you watching this don't just have the normal version of this pattern. Some of you have what researchers have started calling high vantage sensitivity. Vantage sensitivity, plain English translation, the tendency to respond more strongly to both positive and negative input than the average person. Think of it like this. Imagine two plants. Same sunlight, same water, same soil. One of them grows at a normal rate. The other one, if you give it slightly better conditions, it grows dramatically faster and taller than anything around it. But if you give it slightly worse conditions, it wilts faster too. That second plant has higher sensitivity to its environment. It's not weaker. It's more reactive. In the right environment, it outperforms everything around it. That might describe you. You probably absorb the emotional weather of a room. You feel the tone of a conversation more than what's being said. You process things on multiple levels simultaneously, which is why your brain is often still running in the background hours after something happened. You carry context that other people seem to drop without effort. And in the morning, all of that sensitivity is running at full volume before any filtering has kicked in. It takes everything unresolved, everything uncertain, everything that carries even a small emotional charge, and it presents it all at once, not in a logical sequence, not in order of importance, all at once, as a feeling, as a general sense that things are not okay. And from that feeling, the brain writes a story. It calls the story the truth about today, and you believe it. Because it sounds so much like your own real thinking. There's something else connected to this that very few people have heard of, and once you hear it, something about yourself might finally make sense. It's called low latent inhibition. Latent inhibition is the brain's filter that screens out irrelevant information. It's what allows most people to focus on one thing by automatically blocking out background noise, context, associations, and tangential details. High latent inhibition means a strong filter. Low latent inhibition means a weaker filter. In plain English, people with low latent inhibition notice more. They notice connections that others miss. They pick up on subtle shifts in tone, color, pattern, feeling. Their brain doesn't automatically shut out the extra information the way other brains do. Think of it like a kitchen strainer. Most people's brains use a fine mesh strainer. Only the big pieces get through. The small stuff falls away. Focus is easier. Decision making is simpler. Low latent inhibition is like a wider mesh, or sometimes no mesh at all. Everything comes through. The big pieces, the small pieces, the dust, the water, everything. In a creative or complex problem-solving context, this is an extraordinary advantage. It's been linked to exceptionally high creative output and the ability to see solutions that others simply don't perceive. But every morning, when your brain is already running the threat scan and the cortisol spike is making you sensitive, that wide mesh filter means everything comes through. Every worry, every memory, every unfinished thread, every low-level tension from yesterday. Your brain doesn't prioritize it. It doesn't sort it. It just delivers it all at once. Like a pile of unsorted mail on the kitchen table the moment you wake up. And you look at that pile and think, I have so much to deal with. I can't even start. When actually, most of that mail isn't yours. Most of it is old. Most of it isn't urgent. And some of it has already been handled. Your brain just didn't file it that way. This is the lie. Not a deliberate deception. A structural one. Your brain gives you an unfiltered, threat prioritized summary of everything unresolved and presents it as your reality for the day. And most people respond by either pushing through with force, which works sometimes but costs a lot, or collapsing under it and confirming the story that they're the problem. Neither of those is right. And this is exactly why the standard advice fails. Just start. Do 5 minutes. Don't break the streak. Wake up earlier. Make your bed. Set your intentions. If you're a person with the wiring I've been describing, you've tried all of those things, and they've worked, briefly. And then something happened. A bad night, a hard conversation, a day that went sideways, and the whole structure collapsed. And you were left not just where you started, but slightly more convinced that you're the problem. Here's the real reason those strategies fail for people like you. They treat the morning as a starting line. But for your brain, the morning is the finish line of the night's processing cycle. You're not starting fresh. You're arriving at the outcome of hours of background work that you weren't conscious for. The self-discipline advice assumes you're operating on a clean slate. You're not. You're stepping into a room your brain has already arranged, and every piece of furniture has been placed according to a threat prioritization algorithm that doesn't care about your goals. Telling a person with this wiring to just start is like telling someone in a smoke-filled room to just breathe normally. It's not that they don't know how to breathe. It's that the room needs to change first. Let me offer you a framework. I want to call it the signal delay protocol. That's just a name I'm using to make it easier to remember and apply. Here's the core idea behind it. Your morning brain is not your real brain. Not fully. It's a temporary version of you running on cortisol and unfiltered overnight processing. The real you, the version with access to perspective, nuance, and honest assessment, doesn't usually show up until somewhere between 60 and 90 minutes after waking. The signal delay protocol is simply this: you don't trust any broad judgment your brain makes in the first hour of the day. Not about yourself. Not about your life. Not about whether your goals are worth pursuing. You delay the signal. You don't fight it. You don't deny it. You just say, that's the morning brain. I'll check in with that thought in an hour. Think of it like this. Imagine you receive an email late at night from someone who is clearly upset. It says harsh things. It questions things about you. You know from experience that replying immediately is almost never the right move. Not because the email isn't real, but because the version of you reading it at 11 p.m., tired and already a little anxious, is not in the best position to respond wisely. So you wait, you sleep, you come back the next morning, and often the email looks different. Less catastrophic. More respond able. Your morning brain is sending you that email every single day, and the signal delay protocol is simply the practice of not replying to it immediately. Here's the first practical protocol built on that idea. When you wake up, for the first 20 to 30 minutes, you have one rule. No decisions, no judgments about the day, no assessment of your goals, your progress, or your life. You can breathe. You can drink water. You can move slowly through a physical routine. You can let your mind wander gently. You can do anything that doesn't require you to evaluate yourself. This isn't laziness. This is architecture. You are designing the first part of your day specifically to avoid making decisions during the window when your brain is chemically and structurally least suited to make them. Elite performers in high-pressure fields, surgeons, pilots, competitive athletes, are trained not to make non-critical decisions in the first minutes after waking from deep rest. The field has a name for the impaired state right after waking sleep inertia. In plain English, your brain isn't fully online yet. You're just applying the same logic to the emotional and motivational decisions you've been letting the morning brain make for years. No decisions. First 20 to 30 minutes. Every day. The second protocol is what I call the 10-minute delay test. This is for the thoughts that come through with urgency. You know the ones. You need to figure out this problem. Your life is going the wrong direction. You should just give up on that thing. When one of those arrives, and they will, you do one simple thing. You write it down, not to analyze it, not to solve it, just to extract it from your head and put it somewhere external. Then you set a timer for 10 minutes. You do something simple with your body. Wash your face. Make a drink. Walk to the window. When the timer goes off, you look at what you wrote. 9 times out of 10, it looks smaller, more specific, more respondable. Not because you've solved it, but because you've stopped experiencing it as the whole of reality. You gave your brain just enough time for the cortisol spike to soften. Now you're looking at an actual problem instead of a feeling wearing the costume of a problem. And this matters because for people with the wiring we've been talking about, the urgency of a thought and the importance of a thought are often completely disconnected. The brain sends urgent signals about things that aren't important. It sends quiet signals about things that genuinely are. Learning to delay before responding is the skill that teaches you the difference. The third protocol is what I call the history check. This one is simple, and most people skip it because it feels too easy to actually work. When your morning brain presents you with a broad judgment about yourself, your ability, your future, you ask one question. Is this true at any time of day other than morning? That's it, because here's what you'll find consistently if you actually track this. The thought that you're incapable shows up at 7 a.m. By 11 a.m., you've handled 3 things without difficulty. The thought that your goal is pointless shows up at 6 a.m. By 2 p.m., you've made real progress on it. The thought that something is fundamentally wrong with you shows up in the first hour. By evening, you have evidence of your own competence all around you. The morning thought isn't wrong because it's negative. It's wrong because it's selective. It's pulling from one specific slice of reality and presenting it as the complete picture. The history check is how you remind yourself, with evidence, that you've been here before, and you got through it. Not because you pushed through with willpower, but because the chemical state changed, and you kept your commitments anyway. That record, what you've actually done despite how you felt, is the most honest information your brain has access to. It just doesn't volunteer it in the morning. You have to ask for it. The fourth protocol is about the first action of the day, and I want to be careful about how I say this because the standard version of this advice is wrong for the people this video is speaking to. The standard advice is, do your most important task first. Tackle the hardest thing in the morning when your willpower is freshest. That advice was designed for a specific type of brain. A brain that warms up slowly, has a stable filter, doesn't carry a large amount of overnight processing residue, and responds well to structure imposed from the outside. If that's not your brain, that advice doesn't just fail, it backfires. Because starting with the hardest thing when your threat system is still active is like trying to run a sprint before you've untied your shoes. You'll trip, you'll fall, and then you'll conclude that you're not a runner. For people with higher sensitivity and lower latent inhibition, the better design is not to start with the hardest thing. It's to start with the first true thing. A true thing is an action that is genuine, small, and completely within your current ability. Not a task that proves your discipline. A task that proves your brain's morning, lie wrong, drink the water. Open the document and write one sentence. Stand outside for 3 minutes. Make the bed, not for the self-improvement cliché, but as a small physical act that says, I have influence over at least one small thing in my environment. The point isn't the task. The point is the counter signal. Your brain told you nothing was going to happen today. You did one small, true thing, now your brain has to update, not dramatically, just a tiny correction. Oh, we're moving. Okay? And movement, however small, begins to pull you out of the static state the morning brain wants to keep you in. Now here's the hidden barrier, the part that undoes most people before they ever really start. The first few days of changing your morning will probably feel worse, not better. I need you to hear that. Because if you try what I've described, and the second morning still feels hard, and it will, your brain will immediately say, see, it's not working. This is just how you are. That thought is the last act of the old program trying to preserve itself. Your brain has spent months, maybe years, using the morning as a place to run an automated routine. That routine is deeply grooved. It takes almost no energy to run it. Any new behavior you try to install has to fight that groove for the first several days. Neuroscientists call this synaptic competition, new pathways competing with old ones for activation. Think of it like two roads side by side. The old road is wide and well paved. The new road is a thin trail through grass. It takes more effort. And the brain keeps nudging you back to the old one until the new path is worn enough to be easier. That competition feels like the new thing isn't working. It feels like further proof that you're the problem. You're not. You're just in the window where the two roads are fighting. Most people quit in that window, and they never find out it would have clicked by day 4 or 5 or 7. There's one more layer to this. I think it might be the most important thing I'll say in this video. Everything I've described, the negativity bias, the cortisol spike, the low latent inhibition, the vantage sensitivity, all of it sounds like a list of challenges. And if you frame it that way, it will feel that way. But here's the reframe. The same brain that floods you with everything first thing in the morning is the same brain that, when it's in the right conditions, sees more, connects more, feels more, and creates more than most brains around you. The filter problem that makes mornings hard is the same trait that makes you exceptional in any environment that rewards depth. The sensitivity that makes you absorb emotional weather is the same sensitivity that makes you the person others feel truly understood by. The inability to screen out connections and associations that makes focus feel hard is the exact thing that produces original thought, unexpected solutions, and creative leaps that logical, well-filtered brains simply cannot access. These aren't two separate things. They're one thing running in two different contexts. In the morning, before your brain has settled, the trait is a liability. In a focused, creative, or relational context, the same trait is a superpower. The goal isn't to fix the wiring. The goal is to stop letting the morning context make all your decisions about your worth. You are not your 7 a.m. brain. You are what happens when that brain has had time, a small first action, a little physical movement, and enough space to settle into itself. That's the real you. And that version of you is more capable than the morning brain ever gives you credit for. Let me offer you a self-talk script. Not affirmations. Not positive thinking. Just a set of honest internal sentences you can reach for when the morning broadcast starts. My brain is running its morning program. This is normal. This is biology. This is not information about my actual day or my actual ability. The urgency I'm feeling right now is a chemical state, not a verdict. I am not going to make any big decisions about myself in the next 20 minutes. I'm going to do one small true thing, not to prove anything. Just to give my brain a different signal. I've been here before. I got through it before. The fact that it feels heavy this morning does not change what I'm actually capable of. I don't need to fix everything right now. I just need to start. That's the full script. You don't say it loudly. You don't perform it. You just hold it like a quiet anchor while the morning storm does what it's going to do. Then you take the small action. And you let the day prove the morning wrong, because it will, not every day, not perfectly, but enough times consistently enough that the evidence starts to stack. And one morning, probably one you won't even notice as special, you'll wake up and the broadcast will start, and you'll hear it and you'll think, there it is again. Not as a catastrophe. Not as proof of your failure. Just as the familiar sound of an old program doing what old programs do. And you'll get up anyway. Not because you forced yourself, but because you finally understand what the lie is. And once you see it clearly, it doesn't have the same hold over you. It just runs in the background while you live your actual life. One thing I want to come back to before we close. Think about those labels you might carry. Unfocused, difficult, too much, inconsistent. Those labels came from people observing a behavior without understanding the biology underneath it. They saw the smoke and called you a fire hazard. They didn't know the smoke was coming from an engine running hotter than most, processing more than most, feeling more than most. You're not the label. You were never the label. And now you know something that most people spending years in their own heads never figure out. Your morning is not a preview of your day. It's not a report on your worth. It's not an honest assessment of what you're capable of. It's a biological event, predictable, understandable, manageable, not by forcing it into submission, but by understanding it clearly enough that you stop letting it make all the decisions. That's the whole thing. Not productivity, not discipline, not another morning routine. Understanding yourself clearly enough to stop believing every thought that sounds like your own voice. Because not every thought that sounds like you is you. Some of those thoughts are old survival code, running in the background, doing their job, in a world that no longer needs them the same way. Your job now is just to know the difference. And if you found something in this video that you've never heard anyone say out loud before, if something clicked that you've been carrying for years without a name for it, tell me in the comments. Share what this brought up for you. Your experience matters beyond this conversation. It might become the exact thing someone else needed to hear. It might become the next video. Because every person who shows up here and says something honest makes this whole thing more useful for everyone watching after them. And speaking of what comes next, there's a video connected to this one that goes further. It's about why your brain resists good things just as much as bad ones. Why the fear of success is just as biological as the fear of failure. And why the people who seem to have it together have made peace with a specific discomfort that most people spend their whole lives running from. Go there next. And until then, be a little easier on yourself in the mornings. The day hasn't started yet. Not until that first small true thing says it has.